I never thought my marriage would end on a dark highway in the middle of nowhere, but that's exactly what happened on a cold November night. My name is Jessica, and this is the story of how I lost everything and found myself in the process. The engine was making that sound again. That terrible grinding noise that Marcus had been ignoring for weeks, despite my constant reminders to take the car to the mechanic. We were driving back from his mother's house, 3 hours away from our home in Portland, and the tension in the car was thick enough to cut with a knife. Marcus. You know what your problem is, Jessica? You never know when to just shut up and let things go. His words hit me like a slap, but I was used to it by now. 5 years of marriage had taught me that Marcus had a temper, and when he was angry, nothing I said would make things better. So I did what I always did. I stayed quiet and stared out the window at the darkness rushing past. The fight had started at dinner, as most of our fights did. His mother had made another passive-aggressive comment about how we still didn't have children, and I had foolishly tried to defend our choice to wait. Marcus had sided with his mother, like he always did, and spent the rest of the evening making me feel small and inadequate in front of his entire family. The grinding sound got louder, and I felt the car start to shudder beneath us. We were on a stretch of highway with nothing but trees on either side, no streetlights, no gas stations, nothing but darkness. Me. Marcus, I really think we need to pull over. Something's wrong with the car. Marcus. I said shut up about the damn car, Jessica. We're almost home. But we weren't almost home. We were still at least 2 hours away, and the car was clearly dying. I gripped the door handle as the shuddering got worse, my heart pounding in my chest. The check engine light had been on for days, but Marcus had insisted it was nothing. Then the car made a horrible screeching sound and started to slow down, no matter how hard Marcus pressed on the gas pedal. He cursed loudly and pulled over onto the shoulder of the highway, the hazard lights blinking weakly in the darkness. For a moment, we just sat there in silence. I could hear Marcus breathing heavily, his hand still gripping the steering wheel so tight his knuckles were white. I knew better than to say anything. I knew better than to point out that I had been right about the car. I just sat there, waiting for the explosion. Marcus, this is your fault. Me. What? How is this my fault? Marcus, if you hadn't been nagging me about the car all week, distracting me, stressing me out, maybe I would have had time to deal with it. But no, you always have to make everything difficult. I felt tears prick at my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I had cried too many tears over Marcus and his blame games. I was so tired of being the reason for everything that went wrong in his life. Me. That's not fair, Marcus. I asked you to take the car to the mechanic. I offered to take it myself. You're the one who said it was fine. Marcus. Don't you dare talk back to me right now, Jessica. Don't you dare. He got out of the car and slammed the door so hard the whole vehicle shook. I watched him through the windshield as he pulled out his phone, presumably trying to call for roadside assistance. I pulled out my own phone and saw that I had no signal. Of course. We were in the middle of nowhere. After about 10 minutes, Marcus got back in the car. His face was red with anger, and I could see a vein pulsing in his temple. That was never a good sign. Marcus. No signal. Can't get through to anyone. We're stuck here until someone drives by. Me. Maybe we should turn on the hazard lights brighter or put on the emergency flashers. Marcus. They're already on, Jessica. God, do you ever pay attention to anything? I bit my lip and looked away. This was a nightmare. Stuck on the side of the road with a husband who hated me, in the middle of the night, with no way to call for help. I felt panic start to rise in my chest, but I pushed it down. I had to stay calm. We would figure this out. We sat there for what felt like hours, though it was probably only 30 minutes. A few cars passed by, but none of them stopped. Marcus was getting more and more agitated, his leg bouncing up and down, his fingers drumming on the steering wheel. Marcus. This is unbelievable. This is absolutely unbelievable. Do you know how much it's going to cost to fix this car? Do you have any idea? Me. We have savings, Marcus. We'll figure it out. Marcus. Savings? What savings? You mean the money I earn? Because you sure as hell don't contribute anything to this household. That one hurt more than the others. I had a part-time job at a bookstore, and while it didn't pay much, I did contribute. But more than that, I took care of everything else. I did all the cooking, all the cleaning, all the grocery shopping, all the bills, all the scheduling. I managed our entire lives while he worked and played golf and went out with his friends. Me. That's not true, and you know it. Marcus. Don't tell me what I know. You want to argue with me right now? Right now when we're stuck on the side of the road because of you? Me. I didn't do anything wrong, Marcus. The car broke down. That's not my fault. He turned to look at me then, and there was something in his eyes that scared me. Something cold and calculating that I had never seen before. It made my blood run cold. Marcus. Get out of the car. Me. What? Marcus. You heard me. Get out of the car. Me. Marcus, what are you talking about? It's freezing outside and we're in the middle of nowhere. Marcus. I don't care. I can't stand to be in this car with you for one more second. Get out. My hands started to shake. This couldn't be happening. He couldn't be serious. But when I looked at his face, I knew he was dead serious. My husband, the man I had promised to spend the rest of my life with, was kicking me out of the car on a dark highway in the middle of the night. Me. Marcus, please. Let's just calm down and figure this out together. Marcus. I said get out, now. Or I will physically remove you from this car. I felt tears streaming down my face as I unbuckled my seatbelt with trembling fingers. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. But it was. I opened the car door and stepped out into the cold night air, my whole body shaking. Marcus, figure it out, Jessica. Since you think you're so smart, figure it out yourself. Before I could say anything else, he reached over and slammed my door shut. Then he started the car. Somehow, miraculously, it started. The engine sputtered and coughed, but it started. And as I stood there on the shoulder of the highway, watching in disbelief, my husband drove away. He actually drove away and left me there. I stood frozen for a moment, unable to process what had just happened. The taillights of our car disappeared around a curve, and then I was alone. Completely alone on a dark highway with no phone signal, no jacket because I had left it in the car, and no idea what to do. The panic hit me all at once. My breathing became rapid and shallow, my vision started to blur, and my legs felt like they might give out beneath me. I had never felt so alone, so helpless, so utterly terrified in my entire life. This was the man who had promised to love and protect me, and he had just abandoned me like I was nothing. I tried to calm myself down, taking deep breaths and telling myself that I needed to think clearly. I needed to come up with a plan. I looked around, but there was nothing. Just trees and darkness and the occasional car passing by without stopping. It was getting colder by the minute, and I was wearing just a thin sweater and jeans. I tried my phone again, holding it up in the air, walking around, desperate for even one bar of signal. Nothing. I felt the tears coming again, hot and angry and scared all at once. How had my life come to this? How had I ended up here, abandoned on the side of the road by the person who was supposed to love me most in this world? I thought about our wedding day 5 years ago. I had been so happy, so full of hope for our future together. Marcus had seemed like everything I wanted. He was successful, confident, handsome. My parents had loved him. My friends had been jealous. I thought I had won the lottery. But slowly, so slowly I barely noticed it happening, things had changed. The compliments turned into criticisms. The affection turned into distance. The support turned into control. And somehow I had convinced myself that it was normal. That all marriages went through rough patches. That I just needed to try harder, be better, make him happy. Standing there in the dark, shivering and alone, I finally saw the truth. This wasn't a rough patch. This wasn't normal. This was abuse. And I had been tolerating it for so long that I had forgotten what I deserved. I don't know how long I stood there before I saw the headlights. A car was slowing down, pulling over onto the shoulder behind me. I felt a surge of hope mixed with fear. What if it was someone dangerous? What if this made everything worse? But what choice did I have? The car came to a complete stop, and I could see it was a dark blue sedan, maybe 10 years old, but well-maintained. The driver's side door opened, and a woman stepped out. She looked to be in her 50s, with short gray hair and kind eyes that immediately put me at ease. Woman. Are you okay, honey? What are you doing out here all alone? I opened my mouth to answer, but instead of words, a sob came out. All the fear and anger and humiliation of the past hour came pouring out of me, and I couldn't stop crying. The woman walked over to me quickly and put her arm around my shoulders. Woman. It's okay, sweetie. You're okay now. Let's get you into my car where it's warm, and you can tell me what happened. She guided me to her car and opened the passenger door, helping me inside like I was a child. The warmth hit me immediately, and I realized just how cold I had gotten. My teeth were chattering and I couldn't seem to stop shaking. The woman got into the driver's seat and turned up the heat. She reached into the back seat and pulled out a blanket, draping it over my shoulders. Then she just sat there, not saying anything, giving me time to collect myself. When I finally stopped crying enough to speak, I told her everything. About Marcus, about the fight, about him leaving me here. I expected her to be shocked, to tell me I must have done something to deserve it, to make excuses for him the way I had been making excuses for years. But she didn't. She just listened, her face growing sadder and angrier as I talked. When I finished, she reached over and squeezed my hand. Woman. My name is Margaret. And what your husband did to you is absolutely unacceptable. No one deserves to be treated that way. No one. Margaret, let me take you somewhere safe. Do you have family nearby? Friends? I thought about it. My parents lived 5 hours away in Seattle. My best friend Rachel lived in Portland, but she and Marcus had never gotten along, so I had distanced myself from her over the years. I had let all my friendships fade because Marcus always made it so difficult when I tried to maintain them. Me. I don't know. I don't know where to go. Margaret. That's okay. I know a place. There's a women's shelter about 40 minutes from here. They'll give you a bed for the night, some food, and help you figure out your next steps. Is that okay with you? A women's shelter. The words hit me like a truck. That's what I was now. A woman in need of shelter. A woman who had been abandoned and had nowhere else to go. It felt shameful and embarrassing, but also somehow right. This was reality. This was my life now. Me. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. As Margaret pulled back onto the highway, I found myself telling her more. About how Marcus had been treating me, about the constant criticism and control, about how I had lost myself somewhere along the way. She listened to all of it without judgment, occasionally making sounds of sympathy or anger on my behalf. Margaret, I'm going to tell you something, Jessica, and I want you to really hear me. This is not your fault. None of this is your fault. You didn't make him treat you this way. You didn't deserve any of it. And you are so much stronger than you think you are. I wanted to believe her, but years of Marcus telling me I was weak and stupid and worthless had taken their toll. How could I be strong when I had let this happen to me? How could I be anything other than a complete failure? Margaret, I know that look. You're blaming yourself. Don't. I was married to a man like Marcus once. 20 years I spent with him, making excuses, thinking if I just tried harder or was better or prettier or smarter, he would love me the way I deserved. But the truth is, people like that don't know how to love. They only know how to control. Me. How did you get out? Margaret. One day I woke up and realized I had a choice. I could stay and let him destroy me completely, or I could leave and give myself a chance at a real life. It was the hardest thing I ever did, but also the best thing. That was 15 years ago, and I've never regretted it for a single day. Her words gave me a tiny spark of hope. If she could do it, maybe I could too. Maybe this horrible night was actually the beginning of something better. Maybe being left on the side of the road was the wake-up call I needed. The shelter was a nondescript building on a quiet street, and if Margaret hadn't pointed it out, I would have driven right past it. That was intentional, she explained. For safety reasons, the location wasn't widely advertised. Margaret, I volunteer here sometimes. The women who run this place are angels. They've helped hundreds of women just like you. You're going to be okay, Jessica. I promise. She walked me to the door and rang the bell. A woman in her 30s answered, her face kind and professional. Margaret explained the situation briefly, and the woman, who introduced herself as Nina, welcomed me inside. Nina, we're so glad you're here, Jessica. You're safe now. Let's get you settled in, and then we can talk about what comes next. I turned to thank Margaret, but she pulled me into a tight hug first. She smelled like lavender and vanilla, comforting and maternal. Margaret, you're going to get through this. And here, take this. She pressed a piece of paper into my hand with her phone number on it. Margaret, if you need anything at all, you call me. Day or night, I mean it. Me, I don't know how to thank you. You saved my life tonight. Margaret, you saved your own life by having the courage to get in my car. Now go in there and let these wonderful people help you. And remember, this is not the end. This is the beginning. The next few hours were a blur. Nina gave me a tour of the facility, showed me to a small room with a single bed and a dresser, and brought me some clean clothes and toiletries. She made me tea and sat with me while I filled out some paperwork and answered questions about my situation. Nina, you don't have to decide anything tonight. Tonight, you just need to rest. Tomorrow, we'll talk about your options. We have counselors here who can help you process what you've been through. We have legal advocates who can help you understand your rights. We have job placement services if you need them. Whatever you need, we'll help you figure it out. I felt overwhelmed by her kindness. Everyone here seemed to genuinely care about what happened to me, even though they didn't know me at all. It was such a stark contrast to how Marcus had been treating me that it made me cry all over again. That night, lying in the narrow bed in a strange room, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept racing, replaying every moment of the evening, every moment of my marriage. How had I let it get this bad? Why hadn't I seen the signs earlier? Why had I stayed so long? But beneath all those questions, there was something else. A tiny flame of something that felt almost like relief. For the first time in years, I didn't have to worry about what mood Marcus would be in when I woke up. I didn't have to walk on eggshells or monitor my every word. I was free. Scared and uncertain, but free. The next morning, I met with a counselor named Patricia. She was a woman in her 40s with warm brown eyes and a calm presence that immediately put me at ease. We talked for 2 hours and she helped me understand that what I had experienced wasn't just a bad marriage. It was emotional abuse, and it had been going on for much longer than I realized. Patricia. Abuse doesn't always look like physical violence, Jessica. Sometimes it's subtle. It's criticism disguised as concern. It's isolation disguised as protection. It's control disguised as love. And over time, it chips away at your sense of self until you don't even recognize who you are anymore. Her words resonated so deeply that I started crying again. That was exactly how I felt. I had lost myself. The woman I used to be, confident and independent and full of dreams, had disappeared somewhere along the way. I had become a shell of a person, living only to try to please someone who could never be pleased. Patricia. The good news is that you can find yourself again. It's going to take time and work, but you can rebuild. You can become even stronger than you were before. This experience doesn't have to define you. It can be the catalyst for the life you were always meant to live. Over the next few weeks, I settled into a routine at the shelter. I attended group therapy sessions with other women who were going through similar experiences. Their stories broke my heart, but they also made me feel less alone. We supported each other, celebrated each other's small victories, and held each other when the grief and fear became too much. I called Rachel, my best friend from before Marcus had isolated me from everyone. She answered on the first ring, and when I told her what had happened, she started crying. Rachel. Oh my God, Jess. I've been so worried about you. I knew something was wrong, but every time I tried to reach out, you pushed me away. I'm so sorry I didn't try harder. Me. It's not your fault. I pushed everyone away. Marcus wanted me all to himself, and I let him have that control. But I'm done with that now. I'm done with all of it. Rachel. What can I do? How can I help? Me. Just be my friend again. That's all I need right now. Just know that I'm here, and I'm trying to figure out my life. Rachel. I'm here, Jess. Whatever you need. And when you're ready, you have a place to stay with me. My couch is yours for as long as you need it. Her offer made me cry, but these were good tears. Grateful tears. I had spent so long thinking I was alone, but I wasn't. There were people who cared about me, who wanted to help me. I just had to be brave enough to let them. With Nina's help, I started looking for a full-time job. My part-time bookstore job wasn't going to be enough to support myself, and I needed to become financially independent. I updated my resume, practiced interview skills, and applied to dozens of positions. It was terrifying. I had spent so long being told I was incompetent and useless that I had started to believe it. But Patricia worked with me on rebuilding my confidence, reminding me of all the skills and strengths I had. Patricia. You managed an entire household, Jessica. You handled budgets, schedules, problem-solving, conflict resolution. Those are all valuable skills that employers want. You are capable and intelligent and hardworking. Don't let his voice in your head tell you otherwise. After 3 weeks of interviews, I got a job offer. It was an administrative position at a nonprofit that provided services to low-income families. The pay wasn't amazing, but it was full-time with benefits, and I would be doing work that mattered. When I told the women at the shelter, they threw me an impromptu celebration with cake and balloons. Nina. We're so proud of you, Jessica. Look at how far you've come in just a few weeks. You should be proud of yourself, too. But the hardest part was still ahead of me. I needed to go back to the house I had shared with Marcus to get my things. Nina offered to have an advocate come with me, but I called Rachel instead. I wanted my friend there. I needed her strength. Rachel. I'll pick you up at 10 tomorrow morning. We'll go together, get your stuff, and get out. You don't have to talk to him if he's there. You don't owe him anything. The next morning, my stomach was in knots as Rachel drove us to the house. I hadn't spoken to Marcus since that night on the highway. He had tried calling several times in the first few days, but I had blocked his number on Nina's advice. She said I needed space to think clearly, without his manipulation clouding my judgment. When we pulled up to the house, I saw Marcus's truck in the driveway. My heart started pounding. I didn't want to see him. I didn't want to hear his voice or his excuses or his inevitable attempts to blame me for everything. Rachel. Do you want me to go in first? Make sure he's not going to cause problems? Me. No, I need to do this. I need to face him. We walked up to the front door, and I used my key to let us in. The house looked exactly the same as it had 3 weeks ago, but somehow it felt different, smaller, less important. This place that had been the center of my world for 5 years suddenly felt like just a building. Marcus came out of the kitchen, and when he saw me, his face went through several emotions. Surprise, anger, something that might have been shame, and then cold indifference. Marcus. So you finally decided to come back. Me. I'm not coming back, Marcus. I'm here to get my things. Marcus. Don't be dramatic, Jessica. We had a fight. Couples fight. It doesn't mean you need to run away and play the victim. Rachel. Are you kidding me right now? You left her on the side of the highway in the middle of the night. That's not a fight. That's abandonment. Marcus. This doesn't concern you, Rachel. Stay out of our marriage. Rachel. There is no marriage anymore. Not after what you did. I put my hand on Rachel's arm, silently asking her to let me handle this. As much as I appreciated her defense, I needed to say what I had to say. I had been practicing this moment with Patricia, finding my voice again. Me. Marcus, I'm filing for divorce. I've already spoken with a lawyer. You'll be getting the papers soon. I'm taking my clothes, my books, my personal items, and that's it. You can have everything else. Marcus. You can't just leave. You're my wife. We took vows. Me. You broke those vows the moment you drove away and left me alone in the dark. Actually, you broke them long before that. Every time you criticized me, controlled me, made me feel worthless. I'm done, Marcus. I'm done trying to be enough for someone who will never see my value. Marcus. This is ridiculous. You're being ridiculous. Where are you even staying? How are you supporting yourself? You need me, Jessica. You can't make it on your own. That's when something inside me shifted. I looked at this man who had dominated my life for 5 years, and I realized he looked smaller somehow. Weaker. All his power over me had come from my belief that I needed him, that I couldn't survive without him. But I was surviving. I was more than surviving. I was starting to thrive. Me. I got a job, Marcus. A real job. I have a place to stay. I have friends who support me. I don't need you. I probably never did. I just thought I did because you spent so much time convincing me I was helpless. But I'm not. I'm strong. And I'm going to be fine. For the first time since I had known him, Marcus seemed at a loss for words. He had always been able to manipulate me with his words, to twist things around until I doubted my own reality. But I wasn't doubting anymore. I was certain. Rachel and I went upstairs and packed up my things. Clothes, shoes, jewelry, photo albums from before Marcus, my grandmother's quilt, the books I loved. It all fit into 4 suitcases and 3 boxes. 5 years of my life reduced to 7 containers. It should have felt sad, but instead it felt liberating. As we were loading the last box into Rachel's car, Marcus came outside. Marcus. You're making a mistake, Jessica. You're going to regret this. You'll come crawling back, and I might not be here waiting. I turned to look at him one last time. This man I had loved, or thought I loved. This man who had made me feel so small. Me. The only mistake I made was staying as long as I did. Goodbye, Marcus. We drove away, and I didn't look back. I felt Rachel reach over and squeeze my hand. Rachel, I'm so proud of you, Jess. That took so much courage. Me. I don't feel brave. I feel terrified. Rachel. That's what courage is. Being terrified and doing it anyway. Moving into Rachel's apartment felt like coming home. She had set up the couch with fresh sheets and pillows, and there were flowers on the coffee table welcoming me. Her kindness made me emotional all over again. Rachel. This is your space for as long as you need it. No rush, no pressure. We'll figure everything out together. The next few months were a whirlwind of change. I threw myself into my new job and discovered that I was actually good at it. My boss, a woman named Caroline, praised my organizational skills and attention to detail. She gave me more responsibilities, and I rose to meet each challenge. Caroline. You're a natural at this, Jessica. Have you ever thought about going back to school? We could really use someone with your skills in a management position. The idea terrified and excited me in equal measure. I had dropped out of college when I married Marcus because he said we didn't need my degree, that he would take care of everything. Going back to school had always been a dream I thought I had given up on. Me. I'd love that. But I don't know if I can afford it right now. Caroline. We have a professional development fund. If you're willing to commit to staying with us, we'll help cover your tuition. Think about it. I started taking classes 2 nights a week, working toward finishing my business degree. It was exhausting juggling work and school, but it was also exhilarating. I felt like I was finally building the life I was supposed to have, the life I had put on hold for someone else's dreams. Patricia and I continued our therapy sessions even after I moved out of the shelter. She helped me work through the trauma of my marriage and understand the patterns that had led me to stay so long. Patricia. You're doing incredible work, Jessica, but I want you to be aware that healing isn't linear. There will be setbacks, days when you doubt yourself or miss the familiarity of your old life, even though it was unhealthy. That's normal. What matters is that you keep moving forward. She was right. Some days were harder than others. I would see a couple holding hands on the street and feel a pang of loneliness. Or I would have a bad day at work and hear Marcus's voice in my head telling me I was incompetent. But I was learning to recognize those thoughts for what they were. Lies. Programming that I needed to unlearn. About 6 months after I left Marcus, I went back to the women's shelter to volunteer. I wanted to give back to the place that had saved me, and I thought maybe sharing my story could help other women who were going through what I had gone through. Nina. Jessica, this is wonderful. Having someone who's been through it and come out the other side can be so powerful for our clients. You're living proof that there is life after abuse. I started spending one evening a week at the shelter, talking with women who were in the early stages of their journeys. Some of them were skeptical that things could get better. Some were still making excuses for their abusers. Some were just scared. I understood all of it because I had felt all of it. One woman, a young mother named Olivia with a black eye and 2 small children, reminded me so much of myself. She kept saying she just needed to try harder, that her husband was under a lot of stress, that she must have done something to set him off. Me. Olivia, can I tell you something? Nothing you did caused this. Nothing. And staying with someone who hurts you doesn't make you loyal or patient or a good wife. It just means you're in danger. Your children are in danger. You deserve so much better than this. Olivia. But where would I go? How would I support my kids? He says I'm nothing without him. Me. He's lying. 6 months ago, I was in almost the exact same position as you. My husband left me on the side of a road in the middle of the night and told me to figure it out. And you know what? I did. I got a job. I went back to school. I'm rebuilding my entire life. And if I can do it, you can do it. We can help you. There are resources. You're not alone. I saw something shift in her eyes, a tiny spark of hope, or maybe just the recognition that another path was possible. That's all it takes sometimes. Just knowing that someone else made it out and survived, thrived even. Around the 1-year mark of leaving Marcus, I signed the final divorce papers. It should have felt like a sad ending, but instead it felt like freedom. I was officially no longer tied to someone who had tried to diminish me at every turn. I was my own person again, or maybe for the first time. Rachel threw me a divorce party, which sounds ridiculous, but it was actually perfect. She invited a group of women, most of whom I had met through the shelter or my volunteer work or my classes. We drank wine, ate too much cake, and celebrated new beginnings. One of the women, a survivor named Denise who had become a close friend, raised her glass. Denise, to Jessica, who took the worst night of her life and turned it into the first day of her new life. You inspire all of us. Everyone. To Jessica. I felt tears in my eyes, but they were happy tears. I looked around at these incredible women who had become my support system, my chosen family, and felt overwhelming gratitude. Yes, Marcus had hurt me. Yes, that night on the highway had been terrifying. But it had also been the catalyst for me discovering who I really was and what I was capable of. A few weeks later, I got a call from Margaret. We had stayed in touch, meeting for coffee every few weeks. She had become something of a mentor to me, helping me navigate this new chapter of my life. Margaret. Jessica, I have something I want to ask you. I'm starting a nonprofit organization to provide support and resources for women leaving abusive relationships. I want you to be on the board of directors. Your insight and experience would be invaluable. Me. Margaret, I don't know anything about running a nonprofit. Margaret, you know the most important thing. You know what these women need because you've been there. The rest we can learn together. What do you say? I said yes, of course. How could I not? This woman had literally saved my life by pulling over that night. If I could help her save other women's lives, there was no question. Working with Margaret on the nonprofit became one of the most fulfilling things I had ever done. We called it Safe Harbor, and our mission was to provide immediate assistance to women in crisis, as well as longer-term support for rebuilding their lives. We partnered with the shelter where I had stayed, with local businesses to provide job opportunities, with law firms to offer free legal services. Within a year, we had helped 50 women leave dangerous situations and start new lives. Each success story felt like a small miracle, and each one reinforced my belief that no one should have to stay in a relationship that diminishes them or puts them in danger. I also kept studying, kept working, kept building my career. 2 years after starting at the nonprofit where I worked, I was promoted to program manager. I had finished my degree and was considering going back for my master's. The girl Marcus had left on the side of the road, who had believed she was nothing without him, was thriving in ways she never could have imagined. But healing isn't just about professional success or external achievements. It's also about learning to be okay with yourself, by yourself, about finding peace in your own company, about rebuilding your sense of self-worth from the inside out. I spent a lot of time working on that part. I started journaling, meditating, taking long walks where I just thought about who I was and who I wanted to be. I made lists of my values, my strengths, my dreams. I had to relearn who Jessica was, separate from Marcus, separate from anyone else's expectations. One day, about 2.5 years after that night on the highway, I was walking through a park near Rachel's apartment when I saw a woman sitting on a bench crying. She looked lost and broken, and something about her reminded me of myself that night. Without thinking, I walked over and sat down next to her. Me. Are you okay? Can I help? The woman looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. She was younger than me, maybe mid-20s, and she had a bruise on her arm that looked like fingerprints. Woman. I don't know what to do. I can't go back there, but I have nowhere else to go. Me. I understand. I've been exactly where you are. And I promise you, there is a way out. There are people who can help. Let me tell you about a place called Safe Harbor. I sat with her for an hour, told her my story, gave her resources, offered to drive her to the shelter if she wanted. By the time we parted ways, she had stopped crying and had a look of tentative hope on her face. She hugged me tight before she left. Woman. Thank you. Thank you for stopping. Thank you for seeing me. Me. Someone did the same for me once. Now it's my turn to pay it forward. Walking home that day, I felt something shift inside me. This was why I had gone through everything I went through. Not just to survive it, but to use it to help others. To be the Margaret for someone else. To be proof that you can rebuild your life after it's been torn apart. That night, I called my parents. I had been talking to them more regularly since leaving Marcus, slowly rebuilding that relationship too. My mother answered, and I could hear the smile in her voice. Mom. Hi, sweetheart. How are you? Me. I'm good, Mom. Really good. I just wanted to call and say thank you. Mom. For what, honey? Me. For being patient with me. For not pushing me before I was ready. For still being here even though I pushed you away for so long. Mom. Oh, Jessica. We never stopped loving you. We were just waiting for you to find your way back to us. And to yourself. We talked for over an hour, really talked, in a way we hadn't in years. I told her about my work with Safe Harbor, about finishing my degree, about the life I was building. She cried happy tears and told me how proud she was. Mom. You've become such a strong woman, Jessica. Stronger than you ever were before. I know it came at a terrible cost, but look at what you've done with that pain. You've transformed it into something beautiful. Her words stayed with me long after we hung up. Transformation. That's what this had been. Not just surviving, not just healing, but actual transformation into someone new. Someone better. Someone who knew her worth and wouldn't settle for less than she deserved. About 3 years after leaving Marcus, I moved into my own apartment. It was small, just a 1-bedroom in an older building, but it was mine. I picked out every piece of furniture, every decoration, every color on the walls. I created a space that felt like me, not like someone else's vision of what my life should look like. Rachel helped me move in, and we christened the place with pizza and champagne. Rachel. Look at you, Jess. Your own place. Your own life. I'm so incredibly proud of you. Me. I couldn't have done any of this without you. You gave me a safe place to land when I had nowhere else to go. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Rachel. That's what friends do. And you would have done the same for me. Actually, let me rephrase that. You did do the same for me. Remember when I was dating that awful guy in college and you staged an intervention? Me. Oh God, Derek. That guy was the worst. Rachel. Exactly. You've always been there for the people you love. You just forgot how to be there for yourself for a while. But you remembered. That's what matters. That night, lying in my own bed in my own apartment, I felt a deep sense of contentment. Not happiness exactly, because some days were still hard, but contentment. Peace. A sense that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I thought about that night on the highway, about standing in the dark feeling like my life was over. If someone had told me then that 3 years later I would have my own apartment, a career I loved, meaningful work helping other women, and genuine peace in my heart, I wouldn't have believed them. The pain had felt too big, the fear too overwhelming, the future too uncertain. But here I was, not just surviving, but truly living. Building a life that was mine, on my terms, filled with people who valued and respected me. Finding purpose in my pain by using it to help others. Work at Safe Harbor continued to grow and evolve. Margaret and I had big dreams for expanding our services, and we were making them happen. We had raised enough money to open a second location, to hire more staff, to serve more women. Every time I met a woman who was just starting her journey out of abuse, I saw myself in her eyes. And every time I got to be part of her transformation, I felt grateful for my own. One woman in particular, named Anna, came to us after her husband had broken her arm. She had 3 children and spoke limited English, which made everything harder. But she was determined to build a safe life for her kids. I worked closely with her, helping her navigate the legal system, find housing, apply for assistance programs. 6 months later, Anna got her own apartment and started working as a housekeeper at a hotel. She was so proud, and watching her sign her lease made me tear up. Anna, I never thought this was possible. I thought I would be trapped forever. But you showed me I could do this. You believed in me before I believed in myself. Me. That's because I know exactly how strong you are. You left a dangerous situation with 3 kids and no support system. You learned a new language. You built a whole new life from nothing. You're one of the strongest women I've ever met. Moments like that made everything worthwhile. Every hard day, every setback, every moment of fear and doubt had led to this. To being able to help other women find their way out of the darkness. I also started dating again, cautiously. It was terrifying to trust someone new, to be vulnerable again after Marcus had used my vulnerability against me. Patricia helped me work through those fears and learn to recognize red flags early. Patricia, you're not the same person you were when you met Marcus. You know your worth now. You know what you deserve. Trust yourself to walk away if someone doesn't treat you right. I went on some dates that went nowhere, which was fine. I wasn't in a rush. I was happy with my life as it was, and I wasn't looking for someone to complete me. I was already complete. If someone came along who enhanced my life rather than diminished it, great. If not, I was still okay. Then I met David at a fundraising event for Safe Harbor. He was a social worker who specialized in trauma counseling, and we started talking about our work. He was kind, respectful, genuinely interested in what I had to say. He made me laugh. When he asked for my number, I surprised myself by saying yes. Our first date was coffee, simple and low pressure. We talked for 3 hours about everything and nothing. He told me about his work with veterans struggling with PTSD. I told him about Safe Harbor and my journey. When I mentioned that I was divorced, I waited for the judgment or the probing questions about what went wrong. David, that must have been really difficult. I'm glad you got out of a situation that wasn't healthy for you. No blame, no assumptions, just empathy and respect. It was so different from anything I had experienced with Marcus that I almost didn't know how to handle it. We dated slowly, taking our time getting to know each other. David never pushed for more than I was ready to give. He respected my boundaries, listened when I talked, supported my work and my dreams. When I finally told him the full story of what had happened with Marcus, he was appropriately horrified but also impressed by my resilience. David, you're incredible, Jessica. Not in spite of what you went through, but because of how you handled it. Because of what you've built from it. I'm honored to know you. It was the healthiest relationship I had ever been in. We challenged each other, supported each other, gave each other space to grow. There was no control, no manipulation, no walking on eggshells. Just 2 whole people choosing to share their lives while maintaining their own identities. About 4 years after leaving Marcus, I was asked to speak at a conference about domestic violence prevention. The idea terrified me. Standing in front of hundreds of people and sharing my story felt impossibly vulnerable. But Margaret encouraged me. Margaret, your story could help so many women who are still stuck where you were. They need to hear that there's hope, that change is possible. You're living proof. So I said yes. I wrote my speech, practiced it dozens of times, and tried not to think about how exposed I would feel sharing such personal details with strangers. The day of the conference, my hands were shaking as I walked up to the podium. I looked out at the crowd and saw so many faces. Women who had been through similar experiences. Advocates who were trying to help. People who wanted to make a difference. And right in the front row, I saw Margaret, Rachel, David, and several women from Safe Harbor, all smiling at me with encouragement. I took a deep breath and began. Me. My name is Jessica, and 4 years ago, my husband left me on the side of a highway in the middle of the night and told me to figure it out. At the time, I thought my life was over. I thought I had lost everything. But what I didn't know then, standing alone in the dark, was that I was actually about to find everything. I was about to find myself. I told my story. All of it. The emotional abuse, the control, the night on the highway, the shelter, the rebuilding. I talked about the fear and the doubt and the moments I almost gave up. But I also talked about the strength I discovered, the support I found, the life I built. Me. I'm not going to stand here and tell you that leaving was easy. It wasn't. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. But I will tell you that it was worth it. Every difficult moment, every setback, every time I wanted to quit, it was all worth it to get to where I am now. To be free. To be myself. To know my worth. Me. If you're in a situation like I was, I want you to know something. You are stronger than you think. You are more capable than you've been told. You deserve better. And there are people who will help you. You don't have to do it alone. I didn't do it alone. None of us do. Me. That night when my husband drove away, a stranger named Margaret pulled over and helped me. She didn't have to. She could have kept driving, but she stopped, and that one act of kindness changed my life. We all have the power to be that person for someone else, to stop, to help, to show someone they matter. Me. Today, I have a career I love. I volunteer with an organization that helps women leave abusive relationships. I have genuine friendships with people who value me. I have peace. And none of that would have happened if I had stayed in a situation that was destroying me. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to us becomes the doorway to the best thing that could happen to us. When I finished, the room erupted in applause. People stood up. I saw women crying. And I felt something break open inside me. This was why I had gone through everything. This moment, this connection, this ability to help others see that change was possible. After the speech, dozens of women came up to talk to me. Some shared their own stories. Some asked for advice. Some just wanted to hug me and say thank you. Each conversation felt sacred, like I was being trusted with something precious. One woman, probably in her 60s, grabbed my hands and looked me straight in the eye. Older woman. I've been in an abusive marriage for 37 years. 37 years. And today, listening to you, I realized something. It's not too late. I can still leave. I can still have a few good years. Thank you for giving me hope. I hugged her tight and gave her information about Safe Harbor. I don't know if she ever came, but I hope she did. I hope she found her way out. It's never too late to choose yourself. That night, David took me out to celebrate. We went to a quiet restaurant, and over dinner he told me how proud he was. David, what you did today took so much courage. I know how hard it was for you to be that vulnerable in front of all those people, but look at the impact you had. You changed lives today, Jessica. You really did. Me. It's strange. 4 years ago, I would have said that night on the highway was the worst thing that ever happened to me. And in some ways, it was. It was terrifying and humiliating and painful. But it was also the best thing that ever happened to me. Because it forced me to change. To grow. To become who I was always meant to be. David, you know what I admire most about you? You took something that could have destroyed you and used it to help other people. You turned your pain into purpose. That's extraordinary. Later that night, lying in bed, I thought about everything that had led me to this point. The girl I used to be, so eager to please, so willing to make herself small to fit into someone else's vision. The woman I had become during my marriage, losing pieces of herself until she was barely recognizable. The woman standing alone on that dark highway, terrified and abandoned. And the woman I was now. Strong. Independent. Purposeful. Whole. It hadn't been a straight path. There had been setbacks and hard days and moments of doubt. Days when I missed the familiarity of my old life, even though it had been toxic. Days when I wondered if I had made a mistake, if I should have tried harder, if I could have fixed things. But Patricia had taught me that those thoughts were normal, that healing isn't linear, that you can acknowledge the difficulty of change while still knowing it was the right choice. Patricia, you can miss something and still know you're better off without it. You can grieve the loss of a relationship even when that relationship was unhealthy. All of your feelings are valid. What matters is that you keep moving forward. And I had. I kept moving forward, one day at a time, one choice at a time, one small victory at a time, until those small victories added up to a whole new life. 5 years after that night on the highway, Safe Harbor had helped over 200 women leave abusive situations. We had expanded to 3 locations and partnered with organizations across the state. Margaret had stepped back to semi-retirement, leaving me to take over as executive director. Me. The woman who had once believed she was nothing without her husband. Now I was running an organization that saved lives. I also finished my master's degree in nonprofit management. At graduation, I looked out into the crowd and saw so many people cheering for me. My parents, who had flown in from Seattle. Rachel, my constant support. David, who had become my partner in the truest sense of the word. Margaret, who had started it all by pulling over that night. Women from Safe Harbor who I had helped, and who had helped me in return. Caroline from my job. Patricia, my therapist. Nina from the shelter. All these people who had played a part in my transformation, who had believed in me when I didn't believe in myself, who had shown me what real support and love looked like. After the ceremony, Margaret pulled me aside. Margaret, do you remember that night, when I found you on the side of the road? Me, how could I forget? You saved my life. Margaret, no, sweetheart, I just gave you a ride. You saved your own life. You did all the hard work. You made all the difficult choices. You built this beautiful life. I was just the person who happened to be driving by at the right moment. Me, you were the person who chose to stop. So many people drove past me that night, but you stopped. You saw me. You helped me. That matters more than you know. Margaret, I stopped because someone stopped for me once. 20 years ago, when I finally left my abusive husband, a woman at the bus station saw me crying and helped me. She bought me a ticket, gave me money for food, told me I was going to be okay. I never forgot her kindness. And I promised myself that if I ever saw someone who needed help the way I did, I would stop. I would be that person for them. Me. And now I get to be that person for others. It's like this beautiful cycle of women helping women. We lift each other up. We pass it forward. Margaret, that's exactly what it is. And that's how we change the world. One woman at a time. One act of kindness at a time. One brave choice at a time. That night, I drove home to my apartment, my degree in hand, my heart full. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my balcony, looking out at the city lights. 5 years. 5 years since the worst night of my life had turned into the catalyst for the best years of my life. I thought about Marcus sometimes. Not often, and never with longing, but occasionally I wondered if he had changed. If he had learned anything. If he ever felt remorse for how he treated me. But mostly, I didn't think about him at all. He was part of my past, an important part because it taught me so much, but not part of my present or my future. My future was mine now. To build however I wanted. To fill with people who valued and respected me. To dedicate to work that mattered. To enjoy with someone who saw me as an equal partner. To live fully and authentically as myself. I pulled out my journal, something I still did every night, and wrote. 5 years ago tonight, I stood on a dark highway, abandoned and alone, thinking my life was over. I had no idea that I was actually standing at the beginning of everything. The beginning of finding out who I really was. The beginning of understanding my worth. The beginning of learning that I was capable of so much more than I ever imagined. If I could go back and talk to that scared woman standing in the dark, I would tell her, you are going to be okay. More than okay. You are going to be incredible. You are going to help so many people. You are going to build a life you love. This terrible moment is going to transform into something beautiful. Hold on. Keep going. You've got this. I closed the journal and smiled. That scared woman didn't need me to go back and tell her anything. She had figured it out on her own. She had survived, healed, transformed, and thrived. And she had helped others do the same. The next morning, I got a call from Nina at the shelter. A woman had come in overnight, brought by a good Samaritan who had found her walking along the highway. She was scared, traumatized, unsure if she had made the right choice to leave. Nina thought maybe I could talk to her, share my story, help her see that there was hope on the other side of fear. Me. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I drove to the shelter, the same place I had been brought to 5 years earlier. Walking through those doors felt different now. Then, I had been broken, desperate, at rock bottom. Now I was whole, purposeful, ready to help someone else find their way. The woman was sitting in the common room, clutching a cup of tea, her eyes red from crying. She looked up when I walked in, and I saw myself in her. The fear, the shame, the overwhelming sense that her life was over. I sat down next to her and smiled gently. Me. Hi. My name is Jessica. I want to tell you a story about a night 5 years ago when my husband left me on the side of a highway in the middle of the night and told me to figure it out. At the time, I thought it was the end of my life. But it turned out to be the beginning of everything. And I think you're at the beginning of something too. Let me tell you why. As I shared my story with this woman, watching hope slowly replace despair in her eyes, I felt overwhelming gratitude for the journey that had brought me here. For Margaret, who stopped. For Rachel, who gave me a place to land. For Patricia, who helped me heal. For everyone who had been part of my transformation. But most of all, I felt gratitude for that version of myself who stood on that dark highway and didn't give up. Who got in Margaret's car instead of staying frozen in fear. Who chose to fight for a better life instead of accepting what she had been told she deserved. That woman, scared and abandoned and broken, had somehow found the strength to take the first step toward freedom. And that first step had led to another, and another, until she had walked all the way into a completely new life. A life where she knew her worth. A life where she used her pain to help others. A life where she woke up every morning grateful for the chance to be fully herself. A life where she was no longer defined by what had been done to her, but by what she had chosen to do with it. That night on the highway, Marcus had told me to figure it out. And I had. Not in the way he meant, not by crawling back to him or falling apart, but by figuring out who I really was, what I was capable of, what I deserved, what I could become. I figured out that I was strong, that I was resilient, that I was worthy of love and respect, that my voice mattered, that my dreams were valid, that I could take the worst thing that had ever happened to me and transform it into something beautiful and meaningful. I figured out that being abandoned on the side of the road wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning of the best chapter yet. And now, sitting with this woman who was just starting her own journey, I got to help her figure it out too. To show her that she wasn't alone, that change was possible, that a better life was waiting on the other side of fear. As I drove home later that day, I thought about all the women who would come after her. All the women who would need to hear that they could survive, that they could heal, that they could build beautiful lives from broken pieces. And I knew that I would be there for them, for as many of them as I could reach, for as long as I was able. Because someone had been there for me. Because Margaret had stopped. Because Rachel had opened her home. Because Patricia had helped me heal. Because so many people had shown me kindness when I needed it most. And now it was my turn. To stop for someone else. To help them see their worth. To show them the way forward. To be living proof that no matter how dark the night, how lost you feel, how broken you think you are, there is always a path forward. There is always hope. There is always the possibility of transformation. That's what I figured out, standing on that dark highway 5 years ago. That even in our darkest moments, especially in our darkest moments, we have a choice. We can stay stuck in the pain and fear, or we can choose to move forward. We can let what happened to us define us, or we can define ourselves by how we respond to it. I chose to move forward. I chose to heal. I chose to transform. I chose to help others do the same. And that choice, made in a moment of absolute desperation and fear, led to everything good in my life now. So when people ask me about that night, about being abandoned on the side of the road, I tell them the truth. Yes, it was terrible. Yes, it was traumatic. Yes, it changed my life forever. But not in the way you might think. It didn't break me. It freed me. It gave me the push I needed to finally choose myself, to finally figure it out. And what I figured out was this. I am enough. I always was. I always will be. And no one, not Marcus, not anyone, can ever take that away from me again. Because I know who I am now. I know what I'm worth. I know what I'm capable of. And I will never, ever forget that again. That's the gift that came from that terrible night. The gift of knowing myself, of owning my power, of understanding that I don't need anyone else to complete me or validate me or give my life meaning. I can do that for myself. And then, from that place of wholeness, I can choose to share my life with people who enhance it rather than diminish it. People who see my value and celebrate it rather than trying to destroy it. 5 years ago, Marcus left me on the side of the road and told me to figure it out. And you know what? I did. I figured out exactly who I am and who I want to be. I figured out how to build a life I love. I figured out how to turn pain into purpose. I figured out how to be happy on my own terms. I figured out that being left was actually the best thing that could have happened to me. Because it forced me to find myself. And in finding myself, I found everything I had been looking for. The journey wasn't always smooth. There were nights when I woke up at 3 a.m, heart pounding, replaying moments from my marriage. There were days when I saw couples laughing together and felt a sharp pang of loneliness. There were moments when old patterns tried to reassert themselves, when I caught myself making myself small again, apologizing for taking up space, doubting my own judgment. But each time those moments came, I had tools to handle them. I had therapy. I had supportive friends. I had my journal where I could process my thoughts. I had the memory of how far I had come to remind me why I could never go back. One particularly difficult day, about 3 years into my journey, I ran into Marcus at a grocery store. I was in the produce section picking out apples when I heard his voice behind me. My whole body went rigid. Part of me wanted to run, part of me wanted to hide. But I took a deep breath and turned around. Marcus looked older, tired. There were lines on his face that hadn't been there before, and his eyes lacked the sharp intensity I remembered. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Then he spoke. Marcus. Jessica. Hi. How are you? His voice was different. Softer, maybe. Or maybe I was just hearing it differently now that I wasn't afraid of it anymore. Me. I'm good, Marcus. Really good. Marcus. I heard you're doing some kind of work with abused women or something. Me. I run a nonprofit that helps women leave dangerous relationships and rebuild their lives. It's called Safe Harbor. Marcus. Oh, that's good. That's really good. There was an awkward silence. I could see him struggling with something, like he wanted to say more but didn't know how. Part of me was curious what he might say. Part of me didn't care anymore. Marcus. Jessica. I know this is probably too little too late, but I want to say I'm sorry. For that night. For how I treated you. I've been going to therapy, working on myself, and I've realized how wrong I was. About everything. I looked at him carefully, trying to gauge if he was sincere or if this was another manipulation. But I realized it didn't matter. Whether he was genuinely sorry or not didn't change anything for me. I had already moved on. I had already healed. His apology, if that's what this was something he needed to give, not something I needed to receive. Me. I appreciate you saying that, Marcus. I hope you find the healing you need. I really do. But I need you to know that I've moved on. I've built a life I love, and I'm happy. What happened between us is in the past, and that's where it's going to stay. Marcus. I understand. I just wanted you to know that I know I was wrong. That you deserved better. That you always deserved better. Me. Yes, I did. And now I have it. Take care of yourself, Marcus. I walked away without looking back. My hands were shaking and my heart was racing, but I felt strong. Proud. I had faced the person who had hurt me most. And I had held my ground. I hadn't crumbled or fallen apart. I hadn't needed his apology to feel whole. I already was whole. When I got to my car, I sat in the driver's seat for a few minutes, processing what had just happened. Then I called David. David. Hey, babe. What's up? Me. I just ran into Marcus at the grocery store. He apologized. David. Wow. How do you feel? Me. Honestly, I feel okay. I feel like I've really moved on. His apology didn't change how I feel about myself or my life. It was nice, I guess, but I didn't need it. I've already forgiven myself for staying too long, and that's the forgiveness that mattered. David. I'm proud of you. That must have been hard. Me. It was, but I did it, and I'm okay. More than okay, actually. I'm just ready to come home and make dinner with you and tell you about this ridiculous thing that happened at work today. David. That sounds perfect. I'll open some wine. That was the moment I realized I had truly healed. Not because Marcus apologized, but because his apology didn't affect me the way it might have a year or two earlier. I had found my peace independent of anything he did or said. I had reclaimed my power. I had become the author of my own story instead of just a character in his. At Safe Harbor, we started a mentorship program where women who had been through our services could come back and mentor newly arriving women. I loved facilitating these connections, watching as survivors became helpers, as pain transformed into purpose for each woman who chose to give back. One of my favorite success stories was a woman named Carmen who came to us with nothing but the clothes on her back and a fierce determination to protect her 2 daughters. She had left in the middle of the night, taking only what she could carry, leaving behind a husband who had spent 10 years systematically breaking her down. Carmen was terrified, but brave. She worked 3 jobs to support her daughters while going to school at night to become a dental hygienist. It took her 4 years, but she did it. She graduated, got a good job with benefits, bought a small house, and gave her daughters the stable, safe home they deserved. When Carmen came back to volunteer as a mentor, she brought her daughters with her. The oldest, now 15, spoke at one of our fundraisers about how watching her mother rebuild their lives had taught her about strength and resilience. Daughter. My mom showed me that you don't have to accept a life that hurts you. That you can choose something better. That starting over isn't giving up. It's giving yourself a chance. I'm so proud to be her daughter. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Carmen's story, like mine, like so many others, was proof that transformation was possible. That you could take the broken pieces of your life and build something beautiful from them. I also started speaking more publicly about domestic violence, not just at conferences but also at colleges, community centers, churches. Each time I shared my story, women would come up afterward and tell me theirs. Some were still in abusive relationships, trying to find the courage to leave. Some had left recently and were struggling with the aftermath. Some, like me, were years into their healing journey and wanted to pay it forward. Every conversation mattered. Every connection made a difference. I learned that healing happens in community, that we need each other's stories to believe in our own possibilities. When you're in the depths of abuse, when you've been told so many times that you're worthless and incapable, seeing someone who survived and thrived becomes a lifeline. It becomes proof that another life is possible. Margaret and I often talked about the ripple effects of kindness. How one person stopping to help one woman on one night had led to hundreds of women being helped. How each woman we helped went on to help others in her own way. How the impact multiplied and spread in ways we could never fully track or measure. Margaret. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I hadn't stopped that night. If I had been too tired or too scared or just not paying attention. You would have figured something out eventually, I'm sure. But maybe it would have taken longer. Maybe it would have been harder. Maybe you wouldn't have ended up doing this work. The whole trajectory of so many lives might have been different. Me. I think about that too. About all the moments and choices that led to this point. If Marcus hadn't left me there, as terrible as it was, I might have stayed with him for years longer. I might never have found this purpose. It's strange to be grateful for something that hurts so much. Margaret. That's the paradox of transformation. Sometimes our worst moments become our greatest teachers. Sometimes we have to break completely before we can rebuild into something stronger. I thought about that a lot. About how my breaking point had become my breakthrough. About how the lowest moment of my life had been the catalyst for the best years of my life. There was something profound in that, something that went beyond just my personal story. It spoke to the human capacity for resilience, for finding meaning in suffering, for taking what life throws at us, no matter how painful, and choosing to grow from it rather than be destroyed by it. That choice, to grow rather than be destroyed, was perhaps the most important choice any of us ever makes. As Safe Harbor continued to expand, we started offering more specialized services. Art therapy for women processing trauma, career counseling for women re-entering the workforce, financial literacy classes for women who had been kept financially dependent, parenting support for mothers trying to heal while raising children, legal clinics to help women navigate divorce and custody battles. Each new program addressed a need I had experienced or witnessed. Each one filled a gap in the support system. We were building not just a shelter, but a comprehensive pathway to a new life. A bridge from surviving to thriving. One of the programs I was most proud of was our Educational Scholarship Fund. We partnered with local colleges to provide full scholarships for survivors who wanted to continue their education. Education had been so transformative for me, giving me confidence and career options and proof of my own capabilities. I wanted other women to have that same opportunity. The first year, we gave out 5 scholarships. The second year, 10. By the 5th year, we were supporting 30 women through various educational programs. Watching them walk across stages at graduation, seeing the pride and hope on their faces, reminded me of my own graduation and how far I had come. One scholarship recipient, a woman named Lisa who had survived 20 years of abuse before finally leaving, gave a speech at our annual gala that brought down the house. She was in her 40s, going back to school to become a nurse, living in subsidized housing with her teenage son. Lisa. 5 years ago, I was living in my car with my son, wondering how we were going to eat. I had left my husband with nothing, no job skills, no confidence, no hope. But Safe Harbor didn't just give me a place to stay. They gave me a chance. They believed in me before I believed in myself. They invested in my education, and now I'm 6 months away from becoming a registered nurse. I'm going to spend the rest of my career taking care of people the way Safe Harbor took care of me. And to Jessica, who started all of this because of her own painful experience, thank you. Thank you for turning your pain into our hope. I was crying openly by the end of her speech. This was why we did this work. This was what made every hard day worth it. Watching women reclaim their lives, their dignity, their futures. Being part of that transformation was the greatest privilege of my life. David proposed on the 5-year anniversary of the night Marcus left me on the highway. We had driven out to a quiet spot overlooking the ocean, just the two of us, watching the sunset. He had asked me earlier that week about the exact date, which should have tipped me off, but I had been too busy with work to think much about it. David. You know what I love about you most? Me. What? David. That you took the worst night of your life and used it as fuel to build something beautiful. That you didn't let what happened to you make you bitter or closed off. That you chose to heal and grow and help others. That's the kind of person I want to spend my life with. He pulled out a ring, and my heart started racing. David. Jessica, will you marry me? Not because you need me, but because we choose each other. Not because either of us is incomplete, but because 2 whole people have decided they want to walk through life together. Will you? I didn't hesitate. Me. Yes. Yes. Absolutely, yes. As he slipped the ring on my finger, I thought about how different this felt from my first engagement. With Marcus, I had been so eager to be chosen, to be someone's wife, to fill a role I thought would make me complete. With David, I was already complete. This was just two people who loved and respected each other choosing to build a life together. It felt solid and real and right, in a way my first marriage never had. We decided to have a small wedding at the Safe Harbor main building, surrounded by the women who had become my extended family. Margaret officiated. Rachel was my maid of honor. Women I had helped and who had helped me filled the chairs. It was perfect. It was us. It was everything a wedding should be. During my vows, I spoke not just to David, but to everyone there. Me. 5 years ago, I stood on a dark highway, abandoned and alone. I had no idea that I was standing at the beginning of a journey that would bring me here. To this moment, to this love, to this life, to all of you. Every person in this room has been part of my healing, part of my transformation, part of my journey to finding myself and building a life I love. This isn't just a wedding. It's a celebration of second chances, of resilience, of the power of community, of the choice to keep going even when everything feels impossible. Thank you for being part of my story. Thank you for showing me that family isn't just blood. It's the people who show up for you when you need them most. There wasn't a dry eye in the room, including mine. This wasn't the fairy tale wedding I had dreamed of as a girl. It was better. It was real and messy and beautiful and earned. Every happiness I felt that day was sweeter because I knew how hard I had fought for it. The work at Safe Harbor continued to grow and evolve. We started partnering with law enforcement to provide better training on domestic violence response. We worked with schools to develop programs teaching healthy relationships to teenagers. We created a hotline that women could call 24/7 for support and resources. We were changing not just individual lives, but systems and communities. Sometimes I would stand in the main room of our original location and remember the first night I arrived there. How scared and broken I felt. How impossible the future seemed. And then I would look around at the bustling organization we had built, at the women we were helping, at the lives being transformed, and feel overwhelming gratitude for that scared, broken woman who found the courage to get in Margaret's car. She had no idea what she was starting. She just knew she needed help and was brave enough to accept it when it was offered. That one moment of courage, of choosing to trust when she had every reason not to, had led to everything that came after. Had led to this life, this work, this impact, this joy. On particularly hard days, when I was dealing with difficult cases or bureaucratic challenges or funding shortfalls, I would remind myself of that night, of standing in the dark, cold and alone, feeling like my life was over. I had survived that. I had not just survived but transformed. If I could do that, I could handle anything. And on particularly beautiful days, when everything seemed to align and the work felt effortless and meaningful, I would thank that woman too. Thank her for not giving up. Thank her for choosing to heal. Thank her for having the vision to turn her pain into purpose. Thank her for being brave enough to believe in second chances. Because that's what this whole journey had been about. Second chances, the chance to start over, the chance to rebuild, the chance to become who you were meant to be instead of who someone else tried to make you, the chance to write your own story instead of playing a supporting role in someone else's. So thank you, Marcus, for leaving me on that highway. Thank you for showing me who you really were. Thank you for giving me no choice but to figure it out. Because in figuring it out, I became the woman I was always meant to be. Strong, independent, whole, free, and absolutely, undeniably, beautifully myself. The woman who turned her worst night into her greatest gift. The woman who chose to stop for others because someone stopped for her. The woman who learned that sometimes being left behind is really being set free.